Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about the Prime Minister's UNGA address today, which is scheduled to happen later today. He's had various meetings with various counterparts all over the world. He's met with European heads of state. He's met with other heads of state. There's also been there's one single point agenda as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, which remains a redressal of the kind of injustice that Pakistan has faced as a result of climate change at this time, the devastation of the floods that has left Pakistan in the midst of this disaster, and what the world can do to own up the kind of justice that we need from the world. He's remained steady on that one course agenda as far as his meetings with various state heads, his interview with Bloomberg is concerned. Let's hear what the Prime Minister said.
Has the world done enough? What more can be done?
What they've done is commendable, but it is far from meeting our needs. And we cannot, do it alone. We cannot, cough out resources from our own pocket, which are already insufficient to meet our, pressing needs of ordinary life. We need additional funds. The loss is $30 billion, the first estimate. So I think unless the world comes out with billions of dollars of support for relief, for rehabilitation, for building infrastructure, resilient infrastructure, adaptation in agriculture, in housing, things will not come back to normal.
What are you telling international players looking at Pakistan right now, because there's a lot of concern about the debt obligations also coming up?
Yep, exactly. They are going to have debt obligations next month and month after. And
are you going to be able to make that?
We have requested Secretary General today. We have spoken to European leaders and other leaders to help us in Paris Club, to get us moratorium, relief. Unless we get substantial relief, how can the world expect from us to stand on our own feet? It is simply impossible, next to impossible. The world has to stand by us.
The Prime Minister said that the world has to stand by us, and of course this was reiterated by the Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. He also said that this is a catastrophe of enormous proportions. We've seen devastation unparalleled, and the world needs to own up. Again, it's about justice. It's not about any kind of aid. It's not about help. It's about owning up. When Pakistan remains less than 1% of as far as our carbon emissions are concerned, yet we are one of the first 10 countries affected by climate change, affected by climate damage at this time. Let's see what the Foreign Minister said.
I think our message is that we're not seeking, we don't want to beg, we don't want aid, we want justice. This is a global catastrophe as a result of global action, and it requires global solutions.
Right, I have with me Naila Chauhan, who's a former ambassador. Thank you so much for joining us today. We also have with us Shazia Anwar Chima, who is an IR expert. Thank you for joining us. And we have with us Sajid Tarid, who is an activist. He's also a Pakistan American businessman. Thank you for taking out the time. Naila, to start off with you, we've seen the Prime Minister now have numerous meetings with different state heads. He spoke to the French president. He also spoke to other numerous, he's had meetings on the sidelines also. He's spoken to, and we've also had the US president talk about the devastation that Pakistan faces as a result of this climate damage. Of course, our agenda now seems to be and has been consistently that we want relief based on the injustice. Do you think that the world will react? Do you think that we will be able to get the kind of reaction? You heard what the Prime Minister said. He's saying that, of course, it's commendable what the world has done, but really, $30 billion is just the first estimate that we're looking for. And there is, numerous damage. There is rehabilitation to speak of. We've gone back by years. How do you see this in the international scenario?
Well, in the international scenario, it's very important that Pakistan has raised its voice.
Right.
And Pakistan is not a lone voice. If you recall what Secretary General just said, he also commiserated with people of Pakistan, and he highlighted the climate change devastation that's taking place. And now it is high time that the global north takes its responsibility. Like the foreign minister said, like the prime minister said, this is not about charity, this is about justice. And we are talking about climate justice. We are suffering, although we are not a very big polluter, we don't do more than 1%, which is really minimal.
Right.
And yet, we are one of the most vulnerable countries.
Right.
And now, because it's a global world, globalized world, no country can work in silos.
Right.
And the global north now realizes that what comes around goes around. So they will have to face the music, and they have to take their responsibility. And this time, if you see the UN agenda also, it is after a long time that they have personal, in presence, all the heads of state. And the president.
Before this, sorry to interject here, but before this, the summit the Prime Minister attended, even there, when he spoke to the Russian president and the other bilateral meetings that he had on the sideline, this was the main agenda as far as Pakistan was concerned.
True.
So overall, as far as the reaction of the world is concerned, are you hopeful?
Yes, because as I was going to say, that this is the first time that the president of the UNGA said, it's about time we start walking the talk. Because as yet in UN you have a lot of resolutions, you have a lot of talking, but now it's high time that we walk the talk. We can't talk about future, we have to talk about present, which will lead to our future. So that is an important change in the attitude, and I hope that we come up with positive outcome, not
let me go
peanuts.
to Shazia, I'll come back to you. Ji, Shazia, do you, you know what Naila is saying, of course, there are no two opinions about that. She's saying that overall this is the first time, according to her, there's a difference. And that is that, we've had the president of UNGA also say that it's time to walk the talk. Do you think the world is going to walk the talk? Do you think that, of course, we're talking, there has been, as far as the UN general, as far as the president is concerned, he's also said that it's about, debt swap is something that has been talked about.
Yes.
Do you think that it's likely that that there will be that kind of relief for Pakistan? What's your opinion?
I totally agree that this time it's not like just our problem, and there will not be like couple of resolutions and then they will just talk. Now they are considering it a global problem, so a global problem needs a global solution, and they cannot get away with it. I mean, we can all not just don't play this othering game here. So we all cannot get away with it. This climate change havoc is like today we are like the Pakistanis are suffering, they are in pain, they are victim, and nobody knows who will be the next, but there will be somebody next in the line. And it's a very good thing that world has realized this and they are thinking on these lines, and it has been discussed in this meeting that this catastrophe could be a window for the future. So if they think on these lines, like if this is a window for the future, then they have to do some massive changes
Let me come back
in
to you,
their.
Right. On that note, you're saying that there needs to be massive changes overall, and the world needs to come together, and there is a change in the attitude, which is what we seem to agree on. Let me go to Sajid Saab. Ji, Sajid Saab, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Sajid Saab, do you think that there is, we're talking about debt obligations, we are talking about a time when Pakistan's economy is, really squeezed at this time. We are looking at dollar rising. Overall, the situation as far as the floods are concerned, the stabilization of economy remains as a priority for the government from the point go. And the floods, of course, have set us back by years. Do you think the international community, again, in your opinion, from a business point of view, the way that you are looking at from the lens of a businessman, how do you see it? Do you think that there's likely to be the kind of response that we deserve as victims of climate damage?
I have several concerns. Matter of fact, right now the world is busy with the situation in Ukraine. The world is the total overall world economy is sluggish right now. Matter of fact, the food prices are up, and plus at the same time, supply chain is interrupted. So all of these difficulties on an international horizon. This is the world, even then if they try to help Pakistan, but they will be difficult. But let me tell you, the Prime Minister's trip is going very fine. The United Nations General Assembly, they have a 5-point agenda, and 3 of them points are related to Pakistan. They are food prices, energy, and the global warming. And these are the issues they are related to Pakistan. But like Angelina Jolie said, it's a world's time to do more now. This time, they have to step up. They are trying, but they are struggling because the total focus of the Western civilization is towards Ukraine. That's one of the major reasons. But let's keep our fingers crossed.
I think the points that you've raised are very pertinent, and I think those are going to be factors in how much role the international community as a whole plays towards reparation of climate damage. I want to come back to you. Please stay with us. I'm going to go to Naila. Naila, the points that Sajid Sahib is talking about, and I think we've had a discussion on this earlier on also. As far as global factors are concerned, it's a post-COVID world, and like you said, there's also the war on Ukraine, and like Sajid Sahib is saying, there's so many constraints the world overall faces. As far as Europe is concerned, we've seen their own economic problems at this time, inflation at an all-time high, all of those things. We've also had, I believe, France write off, saying that they will help us to the tune of, I'm not sure, I think 117 million. That kind of course, it's very welcome, that kind of effort. Do you think those factors, how much do you think those factors are going to play a role in the kind of help that will come our way?
MAHRUKH, we have to look at it in a very pragmatic way. What you're saying is what they say to justify not taking their responsibility.
Okay.
But if you look at data, when COP26 had taken place, they had made commitment of $100 billion.
Okay.
EU, which does 23% of pollution of the world, only allocated 1.8 million only for assisting the victims of climate change, and yet they spent 34 billion to cordon their borders to prevent the climate refugees from coming. So if you can spend 34 billion on cordoning yourself, why can't you allocate that money to help those people save their lives and livelihoods in the places they belong to? So there's an inherent hypocrisy which needs to be addressed. The global north has now to wake up that they can't play this game any longer. They can't say, oh, we are debt fatigued, we are, all those excuses that they make, because now they're being affected as well. And as far as Ukraine is concerned, you can see that the Secretary General and the Turkey and a few countries negotiated. Now a lot of grain is coming, and it will straight be going to the poorest of the countries. So already you can see that they have started walking the talk. But as far as carbon emissions are concerned, you can see because of the politics due to Russian-Ukraine war, they started going to carbon emissions, which are bigger pollutants. and they're making an excuse, oh, this is a desperate situation. You're making it desperate because of your politics.
Let me come back to you on that note. Shazia, do you agree? I think that, when Naila says that it's about the fact that they're using these factors, it's about hypocrisy of the world, it's about the West, of course, global North, primarily not owning up, not taking responsibility. And, these factors may be relevant, but the point is that, they need to overall own up, they need to overall take responsibility. And these hypocrisies now, they have to be done away with, they have to be dispensed with if nations like Pakistan, it's a point of survival for us, it's a point of, of other developing countries who are also affected like Pakistan. And a right precedent also needs to be set in this regard, right?
I will take from hypocrisy, and I like this thing, and I have written an article on that as well. Some political decisions, can decide how humane you are. We can take the example of EU and their carbon emission, frustration, and how obsessed they were a couple of months before with the green energy, and the big automobile companies, it was in the air, it was in the news that they were building the electrical cars, and they were banning this, carbon emission vehicles. But we have seen, we have experienced, and we have witnessed that some political decisions can gauge your humanity. So this Ukraine and Russia conflict, so let's not go into that, who is on the right side or who is on the wrong side. But the crisis, like energy crisis, which this crisis has created, now Europe is buying coal and going back on the coal. So who will be the responsible for that coal and that carbon emission from now onward? And who is taking these decisions? So I totally agree with Ambassador with this hypocrisy thing, but this time, fortunately, being hypocrite cannot.
Right. Shazia, let me go to Dr. Salma Malik before I go to Sajid Saab. Ji, Dr. Salma, can you hear me? Sajid Saab, as far as the factors at this time that we're talking about, you mentioned the fact that, of course, the things are overall bad as far as, debt, as far as economy is concerned all over the world. We're facing inflation, all of those factors that you mentioned for the world, for the global North. As I understand it, and, overall the discussion, if you've been following, do you think that there is a lot of hypocrisy that is prevalent at this time, overall, and that has to now be dispensed with, like I said earlier on, for us to move forward. There has to be justice, and this is what the Prime Minister is saying, this is what is being reiterated by the delegation there, by the Foreign Minister, overall by all of Pakistan. Our agenda is one point, and that is that, do justice by us, do right by us. Do you think, again, the reaction that we've had from Europe, the reaction we've had from the US, overall, the global North is willing to do that kind of justice?
Are you asking me?
Ji.
Justice with regards what?
Justice about the fact that, of course, we haven't contributed to carbon emissions. We haven't.
Okay. But you see, the problem, MAHRUKH, here is that we may say these things, but also do realize that there's a lot of sincerity when the world powers are kind of gathering around us, because what they realize is that this is one catastrophe which people may not willingly contribute to or intentionally contribute to, giving the devil its due, but the consequences can be anywhere and everywhere without discrimination, and the consequences would be very heavy. This particular notion that the global, climatically global South will always suffer for the sense of global north is something that has now uh, actually been experienced and witnessed by the world community. And everyone is shaken, by the way. But of course, the brunt of that, whatever the shaken part or whatever the feelings that people have for Pakistan, that doesn't kill this very fact that the sufferers at the end of the day are Pakistanis and the state of Pakistan, economic wise, health wise, the long term consequences, immediate, medium term. So, and many of the things that have happened over the decades have contributed to what happened virtually overnight. So it is something that it's kind of a warning bell. The point that is being said by one of the celebrities visiting Pakistan, it's kind of a warning bell for the entire world to shape up before other countries suffer a similar fate. And also the fact that we should also realize that things are changing drastically. And even if we have something that is not of our own doing, we would face the consequences. And these delusions, these things can happen
Dr.
anywhere and
Salma, I
everywhere.
mean,
But
right,
they
you're right
affect
when
us
you
a
say
lot
that,
more is
Ji, when you say that we need to be more prepared, our own preparedness with respect to the kind of climate damage that we've seen. But unless the world contributes, unless they own up, a country like Pakistan with our numerous challenges on, economies front, economic front also, and otherwise also, as a developing country, we have, other challenges.
that's the
We
point,
are.
Maruf, that countries, if such a flood had happened in an advanced country, perhaps the people who would have perished, unfortunately, might have been the same, but the level of destruction and devastation might not have been the same. I mean, just yesterday, the Australian High Commissioner to Pakistan was saying that of those immense, the black summer that Australia faced 2 years back, the total number of people who perished as a result of that were in double digits, not more than that. But had it happened in a place like ours, it would have been very devastating. High population, unplanned townships, several other things that contribute to such issues. So there's something that we need to do at home front, and the doables are not very difficult, and they're not even expensive. But at the same time, the point that you are raising is very important, and I sincerely feel that the world community feels for what has happened. But the fact that it has happened at a time when the world community remains engaged in so many battles of its own, yet another expense
I
to
have to go to
difficult.
Sajid Saab, but I want to talk about, I want your input, and then I'll go to Naila on the Green Climate Fund and, the Paris Agreement, all of those things, and whether the world does actually own up under those agreements also, and what we can expect, from countries who are signatories to that. Let me come back to you. I'm going to go to Sajid Saab. Sajid Saab, as far as the international community is concerned, on a private front, the kind of reaction that you've had, the kind of reaction you've seen from people on a private front, as far as our overseas Pakistanis are concerned, as far as our community, business community is concerned. What have you seen there? Is there empathy? Is there willingness to help on whatever scale that they can?
No, the Pakistanis, overseas Pakistanis, they have energized all over the world. Matter of fact, in New York, Washington D.C., London, they are doing the fundraising. They are concerned. They are watching this human tragedy in Pakistan, especially a lot of overseas Pakistanis. They have relatives, they have families living in a flood-affected areas. But this has to be a community. This has to be the world issue because the devastation, the $20 billion ultimately, it cannot be covered by the private effort or NGOs. It has to be from the countries, larger economies like United Nations, like US, and so far they are just doing very minimum. And like earlier I was talking about, the world has double standard. They look at the Uyghur Muslims differently versus Kashmir differently. So the thing, and plus at the same time, the more hurdles I see in this regard is an Indian lobby in everywhere, and especially in the Western civilization. So there are a lot of hurdles in the middle. Pakistanis, they're trying their best. I am sitting in Washington D.C. I am having a fundraiser myself. We are very active right now at the moment, and I'm very hopeful at the moment. But the world has to see us differently. I think the Prime Minister trip is wonderful. He has gone to the different part. He has met a lot of the presidents and the leaders of the world, and everybody is sympathizing. But like earlier I said, the world focus and United Nations focus is right now on Ukraine, and they are talking about the global warming. They are interested in, but like I told you, economy is sluggish. The world, the supply chain is broken. The world is facing a lot of challenges, but I think.
Thank you so much for giving us your valuable time and joining us, Sajid Saab. Thank you for being with us. Ji, Naila, let's talk about these agreements like Paris Agreement, the Green Climate Fund. What's the way that these function in your experience, in your opinion? Are we likely, is the signatories to these agreements are mostly the global north countries? Am I right?
No, Global South is also signatory to it,
Okay.
but Global North made commitments in it which they have not fulfilled.
Right.
So that is where the problem is. I agree with Sajid Saab, mashallah, we have a wonderful diaspora and their hearts beat for Pakistan, they do a lot of work. But here, this is like the Secretary General UN said, it's monsoon on steroids. It's unbelievable the kind of rains you have had. No country could have dealt with it. And now those who are bigger contributors to pollution have to take their responsibility. There are many countries like USA and Australia have not signed a Kyoto.
Okay.
So they don't feel that obliged. But as far as Paris is concerned, as far as COP26 is concerned, all this conversation is going on. But as yet it was only conversation. Now it is coming around and they realize that they have to walk the talk. And at this 77th session of the UNGA, it is very important that the President said so, the Secretary General said so, that now the Global North has to start walking the talk.
But when you say that, when you talk about the fact that they've made commitments under these agreements, have they in the past, I mean, has there been need for them to honor those commitments? Do they have a track record for honoring these commitments? Because, of course, if we go by that precedent, unfortunately, we're not looking at.
Let's close the past because past is not that bright.
Right.
But
you're saying that the way that this disaster has now come into the face of the world is also unprecedented.
Exactly. So now it has shaken them up. Now they realize that they cannot get away with it. Like I quoted an example to you, I can cite many other examples where you can see the tangible, behavioral patterns which show inherent double standards, and the focus of the West is more about protecting themselves, but now they realize they can't protect themselves.
It's not something, they can't exist in isolation.
Exactly, exactly. It is the same planet. And you can see that in Europe also, the rivers are drying up. Those rivers that used to carry these streamliners and the supply chain has been disturbed.
The way we've seen the kind of heat wave in Europe itself is, it's never happened before.
Exactly. So now they have warm summers and we have colder summers.
Yes,
so there's a total change, and that change is now hitting them as much. So they realize that now they can't do this. Everybody has to stand together to make this world a better place for our coming generations.
Let me, on that note, I'm going to go to Shazia. Shazia, can you hear me? No, I don't think so. Dr. Zulfikar, we have with us Dr. Zulfikar Kazmi, who's a senior analyst. Dr. Zulfikar, we're talking about the overall scenario, the reaction of the world, the way that our case is being pleaded by the Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister, the delegation right now, to attend the UN General Assembly session. The one-point agenda that seems to be to talk about, climate reparation that is due to Pakistan. We're also talking about a certain kind of hypocrisy we've seen in the in global north countries, and that hypocrisy and whether there will be a change of attitude now that it's in the face of the world, the kind of climate damage that is being seen and how they can't exist in isolation. Also, we're talking about other kind of, the kind of agreements that there are signatories to, that commitments have been made that haven't been owned up. What is the best case scenario in your opinion?
Thank you so much for having me. And I believe that at this moment, many things are going on. And at the United Nations, as world leaders are discussing about Pakistan, it's very important. And our Prime Minister and Finance Minister, even Foreign Minister is there. So I think that world got a big wake-up call. It's a good point, because people are understanding what Pakistan needs at the moment. And it's very important that we have to be a unified nation in Pakistan. There should be one, point that people should discuss at the moment, that how they could handle this situation, what is going on in Pakistan. So response is definitely that's commendable. But as the Prime Minister said, it's not enough. So we need to have that kind of response where we could start all those efforts which could satisfy the people of Pakistan.
Right. Dr. Zulfikar, please stay with us. I'll come back to you. I'm going to go to I'm going to go to Shazia Anwar Cheema. Shazia, can you hear me? There was a problem with audio.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear
Shazia,
me?
we were talking about, you mentioned earlier that of course that there's no doubt about the hypocrisy present and also the fact that we need help. We all agree on that. But you also mentioned the preparedness and what we can do ourselves. In that regard, I think Dr. Zulfikar raises a fair point when he says that we need to perhaps have think tanks in Pakistan also who need, we need to get our own intelligentsia together. We need to get our own, scholars, our own people who can sit and deliberate on what's coming in the future and how we can prepare for what's going to happen and what's likely to happen, as far as climate damage is concerned, and whatever little we can do within the resources that we have for the future. Do you agree?
I totally agree, and personally, I don't believe in the word think tanks because they are now just event management centers. Yes, but I totally agree that our academia and our intelligentsia, they must sit down, and what they should do is to decide that what went wrong. Like in this disaster, it is a natural disaster, there is no doubt in it, but we have a fair share in it, and we must agree that we have wrong urban planning. We have built colonies and infrastructures on waterways. We have different, we have encroachments on rivers. And are we going to repeat it for the next time, or we are thinking like, oh, this is not going to happen again, and what if the word is helping us this time, and what if the word will help us next time? So these are the things we must choose right now, whether we want to act upon them or not. It's not like you remember that, and all of us remember that the city Balakot was destroyed, like all of it, and then it was decided that this is situated on an active fault line, volcanic fault line, so it must not be there. But as we can see it today, that it's right there where it was before, like that destruction and devastation. So we have also seen different, hotels and restaurants who are actually the encroachments on the riverways. So nature claims its possessions. Nature does not forgive and forget. So this is our duty. So we cannot just cheat every way out, and we cannot just be dishonest, and we just cannot just be continue being dishonest and expect the words to help us. I mean, the word is
let me
helping
come
us,
back
word
to you.
will help us.
Let me go to Dr. Salma if she can hear me. Dr. Salma, can you hear me?
Gee, I can hear you.
Gee, Dr. Salma, what Shazia is saying is that, of course, there are no, there has to be our own ownership of where our fault lies, and we can't simply close our eyes, shut our eyes from where we're wrong, as far as owning up, taking responsibility is concerned, as far as measures that we can take. In terms of the seriousness with which the global community views climate change and climate damage, that is one. But I think it's two-pronged, because there's also that issue of seriousness that's very relevant within Pakistan and locally also, for us to be able to view climate damage on that kind of seriousness, and to realize that it has the potential to destroy on such a huge scale is another challenge at the home front. Don't you agree?
Yeah. I absolutely agree with Shazia, and this is something that I mean, it sounds very unpleasant to the ears, but this is something that I totally go by.
There's a slight problem with distortion. I'll come back to you. Naila, the same thing to you. As somebody who's of course been, you're a former ambassador. You've had interactions on an international level. There's also an issue on the home front, and we can't close our eyes to that. In terms of cluing in our people, in terms of preparing our own people also, do you think that it's impossible to now just close our eyes and feel that it's not one of those important things? Do you think it's going to need programs at the home front also to educate our people on the kind of potential that this has and ramifications this has, even though we've seen it?
Yes, MAHRUKH, there are problems at home, but most of the developing countries do have problems at home because of several factors. You don't have very high literacy rates, and even in UNGA right now, poverty will be one of those topics to deal with.
Right.
Poverty has its own dynamics, and it has its own repercussions, because people then are so desperate to survive that they start cutting the trees, cutting the forests, deforestation takes place, and same goes for water resources, water management. So yes, we have problems like all the developing countries do, and we try to grapple with it. We have water policy. We are working on tree plantations. Every spring we do so much of tree plantation. We are taking our steps, but this kind of disaster is beyond anyone's imagination. This is unprecedented, and every year it is unprecedented because every year it gets worse. So last year also there were problems. You had earthquakes.
Right.
You're having inundations. You're having so many climate change related catastrophes that it is not possible for any small or medium country to deal with it. Look at the Pacific Islands. They will be inundated, they will disappear from the map if the global north doesn't take its responsibility. Poverty creates its own problems. We do have problems. We try to solve them, but our resources are limited. Our population is growing. That itself is a very big challenge. Your economic growth, which was predicted to be 5%, is now going to be 2% because of this climate disaster. So in every way you're being hit. So it's simplistic to say, yes, we have problems, because what you're talking about is urban development. Urban population is very limited when it comes to 220 million people. So how many are living in the main cities? If you look at that population.
So you're saying that even if we do, have measures in place, there's really not much we can do?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that we have problems, we have to address them, we are trying to address them, but this kind of challenge is really enormous. It's global, So
It's too
everybody
big
has to
for
work
us.
together.
It's
Yes.
too big for us to be able
Exactly.
to. Gee, Salma, can you hear me? Okay. Ji, I'm going to go to Dr. Zulfikar. Ji, Dr. Saab, I don't think I could have summed it better than what Naila Saib was saying. She's saying that there are challenges, but they're on such a huge level that we really can't do much about them. Even if we do take measures, even if we do take responsibility, even if we do try. To tell our people about the dangers of climate damage, climate change. We try to educate our people, and those challenges are not new with us. They exist in all developing countries. So it's really bigger than us for us to be able to tackle alone by any kind of preparedness.
Are you asking me this question?
Ji, Dr. Zulfikar.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much. There is a much distortion in voice, but I would like to address generally what we are talking about, because we should believe on our resources, on our potential. While we discuss so many problems, we have to see how we could manage our, resources. This is a big problem in Pakistan. While we are facing this, disaster, we have to think about that what is the challenge right now? The challenge is right now, definitely, that in the near future, what we'll be facing, that's a food security. That's a food is the food, and some diseases, and some other items, in the country. So these issues needs to be handled according to our resources, We are looking to other countries, other nationalities.
But Doctor, this is what we've been talking about, and the fact that it's not really. We have to look. I'll come back to. Let me go to Shazia with this. Shazia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can
Definitely.
hear you. I can hear you clearly.
Shazia, what Zulfikar Saab is saying, Dr. Zulfikar Saab is saying, I think that what Naila said is that as far as it's bigger than us, and we can say that we should be taking responsibility, but the point is this is not our burden to bear alone. And at the end of the day, it's about the fact that the world cannot shrug off its shoulders and say that the onus falls on countries like us, who the injustice of it, which is what the Prime Minister and all our delegation, the Foreign Minister, are reiterating. We can talk about climate damage, but whatever our preparedness may be, the point is we will still remain vulnerable because of our strategic position, because of where we are placed in the world. So the injustice of that, and the fact that isolation in itself is not an option for the world, is just a fact now that needs to be accepted. And it's not about doling out charity, it's not about doling out help, aid. This is not about a disaster, like flood, which happened perhaps in 2009, 2010, and we wanted the world to help, we wanted aid. This is about the fact that these countries have pledged funds, these countries have said that they will help. These countries can't now look back and say, well, there should be preparedness, and Pakistan should have done this and they did this wrong. It's not as simple as that, right?
Right. Ma'am Ambassador, she is also right that this is like bigger than us, and we should not be, pitied upon this. We don't need charity. We don't need fair share of the doings of the world doing. And what Mr. Zulfikar is saying, he's also he's right. He's also giving this point that it's not like we cannot make this a habit, that this is a global disaster and we need global help. This time, this narrative is going out and the world is understanding it. Our Foreign Office is doing an excellent job, and our Prime Minister has done an excellent job telling people with the tangible facts, with the stats, like this is a global problem and global problems need global solutions. But these global solutions cannot be, country specific. And as I have told earlier, that we do not know who will be the next victim. So we cannot differentiate between, like, if it will be the third world country, so it's okay to be dishonest, it's okay to have the bad urban planning. So if it will be the first world country, so we will take some different steps and we will deal it differently. No, this is not the case. If we are on the fault lines of these weather disasters, we have to be careful, and at least we should admit that we were wrong. We will get help, and our government is doing like 100% to not to ask for charity, and telling the people that you have a role in it and you have to be part of this, solution as well. You were part of the problem, so you have to be part of the solution. So
Right.
these
Thank you
things are
so much
being
for
done
joining us.
perfectly all
Unfortunately,
right.
that's all the time that we have. Thank you for being with us. Naila Chauhan, thank you for being with us. Shazia Anwar Cheema, thank you for being with us today. Dr. Salma Malik, thank you for your input. Sajid Tarid, thank you for joining us. Dr. Zulfikar Kazmi, thank you for your very valuable time. As far as the Prime Minister is of course scheduled to address the UNGA very soon, he of course will be reiterating on the kind of climate damage that Pakistan has suffered, the devastation that we continue to suffer, that has set us back by years at least. He will also be talking about the fact that Pakistan needs justice, climate reparation. Of course, things like debt swap have also been talked about, considering the situation Pakistan faces at this time as far as our economic challenges are concerned. There is one point agenda as far as the Prime Minister is concerned, and that is reiterating the kind of relief that is entitled to Pakistan. We are not asking for aid, we are not asking for help, we are asking for the world to own up for damage that we have done little to deserve. And we expect that the world will take responsibility. Certainly, factors like living in isolation at this time for any country, whether it's the global north, no matter the kind of power they enjoy, the kind of clout that they enjoy, unfortunately is not an option in the kind of overall scenario that we are seeing at this time. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.